Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I'm your host and beat reporter, and I've been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to move forward to another offseason together. As always, you can find our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars every single day on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's show. We've broken down the schedule. We've given our win-loss prediction for the year. Please go listen to our two previous episodes before this one if you want to hear our takes on the schedule and our takes on what we think the Jaguars' record will be. I did my best to kind of touch on every reason why I think the record is what I think it will be. But again, this will change at some point, very possibly. We will do another win-loss prediction the Monday before the regular season after we actually put eyes on this team during training camp. Because right now it is a lot of projection. It's a lot of I think and not much of I know. So with that in mind, the thing I want to talk about today is I think clearly the thing that determines most matchups is the quarterbacks. So I like to do an exercise where I just look at the opposing quarterbacks for the year and kind of size it up. What does the group look like? And the Jaguars certainly play some of the top quarterbacks in the NFL this year. They play, at least four who I think most people would have in their top six, top seven, etc. But everything else going on with the Jaguars schedule. We are going to look weeks 1 through 18, obviously some repeat names due to the AFC South battle, but we are going to rank the opposing quarterbacks the Jaguars are playing this year from worst to best. First up, I have to say, looking at the Jaguars schedule, the team with the worst quarterback situation is the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Colts are kind of danged if they do, danged if they don't. If I don't expect Anthony Richardson to take a step. He's just been historically inefficient and historically inaccurate. A lot of physical tools, obviously a major plus as a runner and on design runs, etc. So tough guy to defend at times, but I don't think a lot of opposing defenses respect Richardson that much. I think if you polled, opposing defenses last year, they'd rather play Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. I think a lot of would have said Richardson, and that's just because he turns the ball over at a high clip. He's very inaccurate. That alone leads to turnovers, etc. So on the other end, if he doesn't start, it's Daniel Jones. I've said it before, Daniel Jones is just Blake Bortles with a Duke education. I've never been a fan of Daniel Jones' game. It's interesting that his image kind of got rehabbed while he was on the sidelines with a headset in his ear with the Minnesota Vikings. Didn't do anything beyond practice with them. But that seemed to somehow rehab his image, just being around Kevin O'Connell, etc. I think either Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones would be the worst quarterback the Jaguars face this year. All right, number 2. I'm going to go with the number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. I'm not I don't think Cam Ward is the second least talented quarterback the Jaguars play this year. I think he's talented than several other guys on this list, but he is a rookie, and rookie quarterbacks always come with a mixed bag, especially, I think Ward's game especially is going to take him a little bit of time to dial in on just that, backyard football, improvision. I think it's something that I'm not saying I don't think it won't translate, but I do think maybe it could take a little bit. So just by the sheer nature of being a rookie, and if they faced any other rookies, they'd be behind Ward. I think Ward, it's funny, the one rookie the Jaguars play this year at quarterback is the only quarterback that's a rookie in the NFL who's really, going to be difficult to play. I'm not a big Tyler Shuck guy. Obviously, Shadur Sanders is looking like he's going to be number 3 or number 4 on the Browns depth chart. So got Cam Ward in the next spot. All right, next up, I got Bo Nix. I just think looking at the rest of the field, there's 2 names, I think, the 2 after him that you could argue. But I actually think looking at the other 2 quarterbacks from just individual point of views, not team success or anything like that, I just think they bring more to the table. I think Bo Nix, it's a lot of RPOs, it's a lot of screens, it's a lot of scrambles. He's a feisty guy, but I'm not sure how much different this is from Minshew Mania type situation. That's just how I feel about Bo Nix as a quarterback. I wasn't really moved by his rookie year. I know a lot of people were because of team success, but That's kind of where I stand on it. All right. After him, I got Bryce Young as the fourth easiest quarterback, or fourth non-hardest, whatever you want to say, quarterback that the Jaguars will play this season. I've said before, I'm not a major Bryce Young guy either. He definitely improved last year. I don't think anybody would or could dispute that in any facet. But like when the Jaguars beat Bryce Young in 2023, and I was on a much worse Panthers team than the one he's on now, he legitimately didn't look like an NFL quarterback to me. It was the worst game I've seen an opposing quarterback play against the Jaguars while I was covering them. And I talked to some guys in the locker room about that game since then who were like, man, it was a rough day for him. There were times where the size looked like an issue, the lack of arm. He definitely got dealt a tougher hand in 2023 than anything else. So I definitely think he's a better quarterback than he was then, but I still think he has some of the same limitations, even if he's improving. Next up, I got Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is really similar to Daniel Jones in terms of positives and negatives as a passer. He's better than Daniel Jones. He brings a little bit better rushing ability and production as well, but they're pretty similar. I think, he's probably a little bit better. So I think that's, I think this is the clear bottom tier of guys. I think if you tiered it up, there'd be like 4 tiers. And I think that's these quarterbacks, the Colts quarterbacks, Cam Ward, Bo Nix, Bryce Young, and Justin Fields, I think are the 5 worst quarterbacks the Jaguars play this year. All right, moving on to the next one, next tier, really. Sam Darnold, Seattle Seahawks. I think a lot of what Sam Darnold did in Minnesota last year was impressive, but I also think best receiver in the NFL, one of the best coaches in the NFL, one of the best quarterback guys in the NFL, and Kevin O'Connell. I mean, Doug Peterson said in the press comments last year, was asked, like, hey, what do you think's changed with Sam Darnold? He went, Justin Jefferson. And I think it was fair. And, yeah, this is recency bias because the last time I saw Sam Darnold up close, he was throwing up a ton of picks to a really bad Jaguars defense last year. So I don't think that highly of Sam Darnold and what he brings to the table. He's honestly closer to being in that last tier I mentioned than he is, I think, to the rest of these guys. Next up, I got Brock Purdy. I think Brock's an okay quarterback, does a good job, keeping the play alive, scrambling, playing the scramble drill, etc. Has a good enough arm, good enough accuracy. I don't think he's amazing at anything, and I do think he benefits a lot from the Kyle Shanahan system. But I think just baseline talent and, what he'll give you, especially in that situation and offense, I think he's better than the previous guys mentioned. Next up, I got Arizona quarterback Kyler Murray. I think Murray's a ton of talent. He can beat you with just these magical type of plays. Again, we've said this about a few guys, but really good at, improvising things. He obviously has his limitations. Hasn't quite hit, I'd say, the expectations for a number 1 pick, etc. But, I'd still think super talented quarterback and a tough guy to contain in really any facet. Next, I got Geno Smith, Las Vegas Raiders. I think, Geno's really underrated quarterback and has been for a long time. He can make every throw, great pocket presence. He's a little more mobile than you'd expect from an older guy. I just think Geno Smith's a really good quarterback. He has a tendency to throw some interceptions because he's a gunslinger, and he's the definition of a gunslinger in today's NFL. But I'm a big Geno Smith fan, and I'd say that's a tier right there. Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold. Though I'd say Sam Darnold is a good bit behind those guys. Another tier, next quarterback up, C.J. Stroud. Big C.J. Stroud fan. There's definitely, I wouldn't say a sophomore regression from him last year. I think the situation around him was worse. He still did some good things. Doesn't make him a flawless quarterback by any means, but when he gets hot, he can stay hot. So I'm a big C.J. Stroud fan. I think he has the talent to lead a really explosive offense. And I've said before, him and Trevor Lawrence is one of my favorite quarterback duels to watch, inside divisions each year right now. I think every time they play, it's really fun. All right, Joe Burrow, I got next. I'm always lower on Joe Burrow than like the consensus. Like Cincinnati fans will tell you he's as good as Mahomes and he's the last one to beat Mahomes in the playoffs. But Cincinnati fans are generally not exactly in touch with the real side of rankings, etc. I know most casual fans probably say he's like number 2, maybe number 3, etc. I think there are a few guys better than him. I think he gets a lot of help from having probably the best wide receiver duo and probably the second best receiver in the NFL. You can even make an argument he's the first. He's that good, Jamar Chase. But obviously a really good quarterback and kind of tears the Jaguars up, at the times that, he had played them in the past. All right. The three toughest quarterbacks, and I think, next, Justin Herbert. I know probably controversial to have Herbert over Burrow, but I think Herbert can make every throw. There are times he's like Trevor-like where it's like his brain turns off for a second mid-play, but he can make every throw. He keeps plays alive. He's a giant dude. He's tough as nails. I'm a giant Herbert fan. All right, next one, the second toughest quarterback I played this year. Second toughest quarterback I think the Jaguars play this year, not I play this year. Second toughest quarterback I think the Jaguars play this year, Matthew Stafford. I think, obviously getting up there in age, and you can make the argument for Burrow and Herbert in front of him. I just think where he's at in his career right now and the situation he's in, he presents the second most problems of any opposing quarterbacks. And lastly, it's got to be Patrick Mahomes. To me, the most impressive resume through however many years he's been in the NFL of any player of all time. He's, the generational kind of athlete, one of the defining athletes of his time. Jaguars have never figured out how to slow him down. So we'll see if this new regime can do so. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. My name is John Shipley. Please remember to follow the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else that you listen to your podcasts. You can also find all of my podcasts, videos, press conferences, interviews, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube at Sports Videos on SI. Thank you guys, and I'll catch you next time.